In this city, you're either hunter or prey. I picked a third option. Be the dog that bites first. Rain had rinsed the alley an hour ago, but the stink never left the lower district. It clung to brick and breath, damp concrete, burnt rubber, cheap booze that curdled the air. Neon bled from a busted sign, painting the puddles the color of a bruise. My boots left ripples on a rainbow slick of oil, and somewhere behind me Mika coughed into the sleeve of her oversized sweatshirt. "You shouldn't be out front," she whispered. Her voice was soft, always soft, like she was afraid of cracking the air. "They said it's a sweep tonight." "They always say it's a sweep," I said. "Keep your hood up." Kai snorted from his perch on a stack of milk crates, a cracked laptop balanced across his knees like an altar. "My police scanner says they're not lying this time." Less talk, more helmets clacking. I'd give us 20 minutes before they turn this alley into a fishbowl. He looked like trouble and talent stitched together, razor grin, knuckles scabbed from solder burns, wires braided like bracelets. Half the time he could coax life out of electronics with a glare, the other half, he kicked them until they complied. The broken hinge on his laptop meant it never closed, which he swore gave it character. River stood in the mouth of the alley, a shadow against thicker dark. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He was our wall, the kind you only notice when you lean back and feel something hold. He rolled his shoulders, and the knife at his hip winked once, quick as a blink. 2 exits, I said. Back through the laundry and over the fence if we need soft. Forward if we need fast. Mika's eyes, wide and glassy from lack of sleep, flicked to me. "And you?" "I'll get creative," by which he means stupid, Kai murmured. I checked the strap on my pack, made sure the little things were where they always were, spare batteries, a coil of fishing line. The tin box of meds Mika needed when her chest knotted, 3 stale granola bars I pretended were currency with the universe. I listened, to the alley, to my pack, to them, and then the city gave me what I wanted, sirens, distant at first. Then a low hum synchronized with my pulse. "Helmets," River said at last. We moved without thinking. We'd practiced it. Mika behind River, Kai slinging the laptop into its cloth. Sling, me peeling off toward the front where the alley opened to the street. The first squad car slid past like a shark fin, windows black, wipers beating time. Then came the boots. They always look too clean down here, those boots. Too new for streets like ours. 8th Precinct, Kai muttered. "So this is that new program. The one where they pretend to help by herding us onto buses. Air tastes like a trap," River said. I tasted it too. Metal. Ozone. The sticky sweet tang that meant someone somewhere had broken a bottle and laughter had turned into shouting. And under it all, the churn of pheromones, a tide my body had learned to surf or drown. An Omega's nose isn't a nose. It's a compass and a curse. The alley was layered with us. Fear, fatigue, that shaky, fragile hope that thrives like weeds in cracks. And then another scent threaded through and everything else went bright and thin. Alpha. Not just any alpha. The kind that wore command like second skin. Boots stopped at the mouth of our alley. A figure stepped into the neon bruise. Rain pebbled across black armor. Visor up. He was older than the rookies behind him by at least a decade. Lines carved deep at the eyes and mouth, as if life had taken a knife to his face and he'd memorized the lesson. The others shifted, their focus sliding toward him like iron filings finding a magnet. "Lieutenant," someone said. "Chain Dog," Kai breathed, the nickname shaped like both prayer and curse. I'd heard it too, rumors of the precinct's leashholder, the one who kept his people in line and his city on its knees. The Chain Dog didn't bark. He didn't need to. You felt him, and you behaved. He felt me too. I saw it, the smallest hitch in his inhale, a pause in his shoulders like a muscle remembering pain. Our scents crossed midair, and the alley snapped tight as a snare. He lifted a hand. "Hold." The rookies froze. One, jittery with borrowed courage, muttered, "Sir, orders are—" I said, "Hold." His voice wasn't loud. It was iron cooling in a mold. I stepped out from behind a rusted dumpster before River could stop me. Rain tapped my eyelashes. Mika made a tiny noise that I pretended not to hear. The lieutenant's gaze locked on mine. gray eyes, clear even in the neon mud. Name, he said. Not prey, I said. That's the one that matters. He blinked once, and in the polite half-second of his surprise I moved. Momentum is its own kind of mercy. I closed the distance with the practiced arrogance of someone who'd learned that first strikes save lives, mine and theirs. My blade kissed the seam of his armor at his ribs, one hand fisted in the strap at his shoulder. The rookies shouted. River's knife whispered free behind me. The lieutenant didn't flinch. Up close, the scent of him was ruinous. Cedar smoke and cold steel, and something cleaner underneath, like rain over stone. It hit me like a memory I didn't own. My body stuttered, traitorous, heat rolling through me in a slow, shameful wave. His pupils dilated. His throat worked. He didn't reach for me. Easy, he said. And I hated the word because it assumed we had choices. No one needs to get hurt tonight. Then, call your puppies off, I said. We already have enough scars. A ghost of amusement cut through the granite of his face. You're giving orders to the chain dog? I'm telling you how this ends without funerals. My blade pressed harder. I'm not asking. Behind him, gritty rookie shuffled. Sir, we can't. You can, the lieutenant said without looking back. You will. For a beat, the alley was only our breathing and the neon flicker. Water trickled from the visor edge of his helmet and beaded down his cheekbone like a reluctant tear. His scent shook again under mine, a ripple, a lurch, but he held himself as if he could bottle a storm. Lennox, Mika begged softly. Please, take your people, the lieutenant said. Leave by the back. You have 5 minutes. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do with the pressure building in my chest. Is this a trick? It's a choice, he said. I'm giving you one. Don't make me regret it. The blade at his ribs trembled. My hand did not. What's your leash made of, chain dog? I asked. And who holds it? His mouth twitched, like maybe he remembered how to smile, and it scared him. I do, he said. I stepped back 2 inches, then 3, feeling every millimeter like a cliff. He didn't grab. He didn't snap. He just stood there absorbing the alley's hate, and need like he'd been built for it. River, I said. Get them out. River's presence moved past me. A gravity you can trust. Mika's fingers brushed my sleeve, light as apology. Kai shot the lieutenant a look that said he was filing this moment somewhere he'd use later. The rookies bristled but didn't break ranks. The lieutenant's eyes stayed on me as my family slipped toward the laundry door. You coming with us, Lennox? Mika's voice from the dark. In a minute. The lieutenant heard the name. It sat in his gaze like a weight. You think you won something tonight, I told him. You didn't. I don't keep score that way, he said. Everyone keeps score. I should have been satisfied. No blood, no cuffs, my people intact. Instead, something colder slid under my skin, a curiosity I didn't ask for. I could smell it now with uncomfortable clarity, not hunger, not domination, something steadier, something that didn't aim to break. He could smell me too. I watched it hit him again, watched his jaw tighten against a tide he refused to ride. He didn't move a single inch he didn't intend. I sheathed the blade. You're a bad kind of dangerous, I said. How's that? You don't want to own me, I said, and my laugh sounded like it belonged to someone else. You want to leave me standing. That's worse. I turned into the dark after my pack, heart knocking against my ribs, the alley stretching long and wet ahead. And for the first time since I learned what alphas could do with a look and a breath, I was afraid for a reason I couldn't fight. This alpha didn't want to break me, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The warehouse was a skeleton, hollowed out by time and rain. Rust streaked down corrugated walls like dried tears, and the roof leaked just enough to turn one corner into a swamp no one claimed. We'd dragged in old mattresses, crates for tables, a handful of chairs that didn't match. It smelled like dust and damp wool, but it was ours. And in a city that wanted us caged or burned out, ours was everything. Mika sat cross-legged on a pile of blankets, braiding scraps of colored cord she'd scavenged. She looked too soft for this place, dark hair falling in her eyes, sweatshirt sleeves chewed at the cuffs. But she was tougher than she knew. She had to be. "They'll come back," she murmured, fingers moving faster. "Next time they won't stop. They'll set fire to all of us just to be sure." Across from her, Kai balanced his crooked laptop on a crate. Its cracked screen threw a pale glow across his sharp grin. "Not if I keep rewriting their radio chatter. I've been 3 steps ahead for weeks. They'd have to be geniuses to catch me." He tossed his hair out of his face, self-satisfied. "Spoiler, they're not. You can't outsmart fire, Kai." Mika's voice broke a little, and she bit the cord harder, pulling the braid tight. "I can reroute the gas main," he shot back, "which is basically the same thing." "Both of you, shut it," I said. It came out sharper than I meant, but I couldn't let fear spread. Fear was a virus, contagious, invisible, faster than fire. Mika dropped her gaze. Kai rolled his eyes but kept typing. The rhythm of their voices had become familiar, like 2 dogs barking to prove they still had breath. Better they argued about survival than admitted they weren't sure we deserved it. River sat apart, as he always did, on an overturned crate by the wall. He drew his knife along a whetstone in steady strokes, metal sighing with each pass. His silence filled the warehouse louder than Kai's bravado. From the corner of my eye I saw him watching me, not obvious, but constant, the kind of watchfulness that wasn't about threat, but about tether. Sometimes I thought if I let myself stumble, he'd be the first to catch me. Other times I wasn't sure if I wanted that. I crouched by the single lantern we had, adjusted the flame down until the shadows softened. The flicker painted their faces in pieces. Mika's tired defiance, Kai's cocky fire, River's granite calm. My family, my pack, my responsibility. They didn't see the way my ribs clenched when the wind outside carried, sirens closer, or how my throat dried remembering the lieutenant's eyes. They didn't need to. That was my job. To wear armor so they could pretend for one more night that we weren't hunted. I am their alpha, I reminded myself, though the world called me Omega like it meant victim. I am their wall, their teeth, their ground underfoot. If I fall, they fall. If I crumble, they turn to ash. "Get some sleep," I ordered, even though I knew none of us would. "We move at dawn." Mika curled onto her mattress, back to the wall. Kai muttered something about stupid schedules but closed his laptop. River kept sharpening his knife, eyes never leaving me. The scrape of steel was steady, anchoring. I lay down last, staring at the leaking roof until my vision blurred. The city wanted us gone. The cops would be back. And that chained dog's gray eyes lingered in my head like a bruise you keep pressing, just to feel the ache. But I couldn't show that. Not here. Not to them. I am their pack. If I collapse, they collapse. And I refuse to let the world bury us yet. The station was nothing like the lower district. No dripping ceilings, no rust bleeding down walls, no shadows thick enough to hide in. Here the walls were clean and cold, pale gray concrete sealed with the smell of metal polish and burnt coffee. If the warehouse was a skeleton, this place was a jaw, clenched, merciless, built to grind down anything that slipped inside. I pictured him there, the lieutenant, after the alley. I imagined him because it was easier than sleeping, easier than asking myself why he hadn't struck when he could have. His office wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. 1 desk, 1 chair, 1 stack of files with corners bent from constant use. The blinds shut out the city, or maybe the city shut him out. He sat rigid in uniform, gloves on the desk like a pair of muzzled hands. The door opened without a knock. The captain handed him a file, thin as a blade. "Lower district sweep. Your unit leads." He took it. Didn't blink. Didn't ask. That was his reputation. The chain dog never balked at orders. He read the first page once, twice, and the edges of his jaw tightened until they might crack. Beneath the neat type, I could almost hear the memory drag him under. A flash of red across his palms, slick and hot. The scream of a voice that had called his name only to choke out silence. A body too light in his arms. He had carried her, or maybe only the guilt. Whichever it was, it hadn't left him since. His shoulders squared. He shut the file with one precise motion. From the doorway came a voice, dry and sharp. "What's wrong, dog? The scent of burned-out rats too much for you?" Detective Grace leaned against the frame, lips curling around the smoke of her words. She was the kind who smiled when she smelled weakness. "You're getting soft." He looked at her once, just once. The kind of look that didn't need words to pin you in place. But she smirked anyway, fearless in her ignorance. "Be careful," she added, her tone a blade dressed as a joke. "When the leash snaps, even the best trained mutt forgets who he works for." Silence held the room. Only the hum of the fluorescent light and the steady, deliberate inhale of a man who refused to let ghosts break surface. Inside, though, I could almost feel it, the way his chest hollowed around the ache, how his hands itched to grip something more than a pen or a leash. He didn't answer Grace. He didn't rise to the taunt. He only set the file aside, poured himself coffee gone bitter from hours on the burner, and stared at the black liquid as though it might give him absolution. "I won't fail again." The thought lived in him like marrow. Not this time, not another one. The chained dog drank, and the taste was ash. The river under the bridge smelled like everything the city wanted to forget. Oil, sewage, the faint rot of something drowned too long. The air was damp, cold enough to sting, and the mist rolled in fat curls that swallowed sound. Perfect for hiding, if you believed in luck. I didn't. "Keep close," I whispered. Mika's fingers brushed the hem of my jacket as if tethering herself to me. Kai stumbled with his laptop bag banging his hip. River flanked us like a shadow, silent and coiled, eyes scanning every rusted girder. The bridge stretched wide above us, iron beams groaning when trucks rumbled across. We moved fast, heads low, boots splashing in shallow puddles. We'd done this before, shift to a new nest, keep ahead of the sweep. Tonight felt different, though. The sirens had stopped. That was never good. "Lennox," River murmured. His hand slid to his knife. I smelled them before I saw them. Crisp uniforms, leather belts, the faint bite of gun oil mixed with adrenaline. The fog peeled back to reveal helmets, rifles glinting under weak lamps. A net of blue and black cutting us off. Mika's breath hitched. Kai cursed under his teeth. I stepped forward. "Don't break," I told them. "Not until I do." Figures emerged from the mist, boots heavy on wet asphalt. At their center, like gravity itself, was the chain dog. Lieutenant Jeffrey, visor up, eyes sharp, expression carved out of stone. He carried command in his shoulders the way others carried weapons. Naturally, inevitably, our scents collided again, sharp enough to scrape my lungs. I hated the way my body knew him already. From the flank came Grace, her smirk bright against the gloom. She raised a hand. "Sweep them." "No survivors this time." Mika whimpered. I squared my shoulders, teeth bared. If we were going to burn, I'd make sure we left scars. My knife was in my hand before I knew it. River mirrored me, a silent wall. But then it happened. The chain dog lifted his hand. "Hold," Jeffrey said. The word cut sharper than my blade. His unit hesitated mid-step. Confusion sparked through their ranks. Grace turned on him, sneer twisting. "Lieutenant," I said, "hold." His voice was iron dragged slow across stone. The night stuttered around us. My breath fogged in the air. And for one fractured second, it felt like the world had tilted. My heart slammed against my ribs. "He's standing in front of us?" Grace snapped. "They're rats. Orders are clear." She signaled to her squad, fury flashing like teeth. The first rifle cracked. River shoved Mika down. Kai dove behind a pillar, cursing. Bullets sparked off iron beams. I lunged forward, knife ready, every nerve screaming. But Jeffrey's arm swung out, signaling his men back even as the gunfire echoed. His glare alone froze them. For a heartbeat, his unit looked less like soldiers and more like dogs second-guessing the leash. The fight was messy, chaotic. A single shot tore through a crate. Another pinged off the concrete. I threw myself between Mika and the spray of bullets, dragging her toward cover. River slashed a rookie's arm, sending the man stumbling. Kai managed to trip another with a well-placed kick. Through it all, Jeffrey didn't fire. He stood in the crossfire like he was carved from the bridge itself, jaw locked, hand raised against his own. We scrambled back toward the shadows, slipping into the fog at the river's edge. My lungs burned, heart pounding with every step, but we were moving. We were alive. Behind me, Grace's voice cracked the air. "You'll regret this, dog." His answer didn't carry, but his silence did. By the time we reached the other side, my chest heaved, Mika clung to me, and Kai muttered curses like prayers. River's knife was wet, his expression unreadable. I looked back once, through the mist, and caught his eyes. Gray, steady, unshaken even as chaos raged around him. He stood against his own. For us, the thought gnawed deeper than fear. I should have been celebrating survival. Instead, I felt the weight of that image pressing into me like a brand. The chain dog hadn't struck. He had shielded, and I couldn't decide if that made him my enemy, or something far, far worse. The lower district never slept, but it did pause, like a dying beast that wheezes between fits of violence. Midnight was that pause. The sirens were distant, the streets slick with condensation, and every shadow was drunk enough to sway. My pack was hidden 2 blocks away, in the shell of an old laundry. I should have been with them. Instead, I stalked the one place no sane man went alone, the edge of the cordon, where the police vehicles idled like wolves with their engines growling low. The lieutenant's car was easy to find. It wasn't marked, not really, but it carried his presence, sharp, still, unbothered by the grime around it. He sat inside, visor off, head bent toward a paper report, not a screen. Who even read paper anymore? His window was cracked. Coffee steamed from a dented thermos. The glow from a street lamp cut across his cheekbones, carving him into something less human. More statue. I moved like smoke until I was at his door. My knife was in my palm, my pulse steady. The handle felt like truth against my skin. One motion, and I had the blade against the column of his throat before he could blink. "Evening, chain dog," I murmured, leaning in through the open window. My breath fogged against his skin. "What's the matter? Didn't feel like snapping your teeth tonight?" He didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. His eyes lifted to mine, gray, unyielding, a tide that refused to break. "If you meant to kill me," he said, voice low, "you would have done it already." I pressed harder, just enough to let him know how close steel could kiss. "What? No hunger in your eyes? No urge to pin me down and remind me what omegas are for? Did I get unlucky and find the one alpha in the district past his expiration date?" His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You think strength is measured by what I take from you?" I laughed, sharp, humorless. "Don't tell me you're broken, dog, because that would almost make me pity you." His answer was quieter than the hum of the idling engine. "I hold the chain." By choice. Something in my chest stuttered, traitorous. His scent was there, close enough to drown me. Smoke and iron, cedar and storm. It stirred my instincts like a whip crack. My body wanted to respond, but I clenched my jaw until my teeth ached. "Choice," I repeated, tasting the word like it was poison. "Must be nice to pretend you have it." His gaze didn't waver. "And you don't?" I shifted closer, my arm pressing against the window frame, knife angled, so I could feel the steady thrum of his pulse under the blade. Our faces were inches apart, heat coiling in the narrow space like another body. My choices ended the day I learned alphas hunt us like sport. For a long moment, neither of us breathed. The night outside hushed, as if listening. Then he said, "You're still here. You didn't run." "That's a choice, too." The words landed heavier than a blow. I wanted to snarl, to spit, to make him flinch. Instead, I found myself studying the faint scar at his jawline. The way. His lashes caught the lamplight, the calm refusal in his stillness. He should have shoved me back, should have drawn his gun, should have proven me right about what he was. He did none of it. "You're dangerous," I whispered, almost to myself. "Not because you want to own me, but because you don't." His throat shifted under the blade, swallowing once. "You should go before someone sees." I let the silence stretch until my pulse was screaming. Then I eased the knife away, slow, deliberate, leaving behind nothing but a thin ghost of pressure on his skin. My body felt like it had betrayed me by trembling. "Careful, dog," I said, pulling back into the shadows. "Chains break." His reply followed me into the dark, calm, unshaken. "Only if I let them." And that was worse than any threat, because I believed him. The warehouse smelled of rust and wet socks, but it was home. Lantern light flickered off the corrugated walls, throwing jagged shadows across the stacks of crates we used as furniture. Dinner was thin tonight. 2 cans of beans, a loaf of bread gone stale, around the edges, and a few bruised apples I'd traded for earlier. I split it with a knife that had seen more fights than meals. Kai sprawled across his mattress, laptop glow painting him in ghost light. "That cop," he muttered, as if he couldn't let the thought go. He didn't move like the others. Didn't even blink when you had steel on him. Weird. Mika hugged her knees, her voice small but insistent. He looked at us. Not like trash. Not like we were... She hesitated, chewing the cuff of her sleeve. Not like we were already dead. The words landed heavy in the air. River's knife scraped once against a whetstone, slow and deliberate, but he said nothing. I slammed the blade into the loaf of bread harder than necessary. "Don't fool yourselves. He's a badge. Same as the rest." The pieces tore ragged under my hand. One moment of hesitation doesn't change what he is. Mika's eyes lifted, wide and stubborn. "But you saw it too, didn't you?" My jaw clenched until it ached. "Don't crack. Don't let them see it." "Forget it," I snapped. "You start dreaming about heroes. You won't wake up in time when the fire starts. That's how people burn." Kai raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fine. No heroes. But still." He didn't pull the trigger. I shoved the bread across the crate toward Mika, more roughly than I meant. "Eat." She flinched, then softened, breaking the chunk in half and offering part to River. His hand brushed hers, steady, grounding. I sat back, trying to shake the weight pressing into my ribs. The memory of gray eyes lingered like smoke I couldn't cough out. Not pity, not hunger. Something else entirely. Something that rattled the bars I'd welded around myself. The door creaked. Instinct made me reach for my knife, but it was only the wind. Or so I thought. A shadow shifted near the warehouse entrance. There and gone. Watching. I told myself it was nothing, but the hairs on my neck rose anyway. Later, when the food was gone and the lantern dimmed, I felt it again. That presence. My pack settled into restless sleep. Mika curled close to River, Kai muttering code in his dreams. I stayed awake, back against the cold wall, carving silence into armor. And then, for a fleeting heartbeat, I caught him through the slats of the broken window. The chain dog himself, standing in the alley, half veiled by shadow. He wasn't moving in for a raid. He was just watching, eyes fixed not on the building but on me. I froze, bread knife still in my hand, useless against the sudden crack in my chest. Our gazes locked across the distance. No command, no threat, no chain, just recognition. And in that instant, the look wasn't predator to prey. It was soldier to soldier. Respect. It unsettled me worse than any gun aimed at my head. The warehouse was quiet except for the sound of River sharpening his blade again, and Mika's soft breathing as she slept. I lay awake, staring at the rust-flecked ceiling, counting the cracks like they were tally marks carved by someone before me. Sleep never came easy. When it did, it came with ghosts. I used to think my first scar was on my arm, the jagged one from climbing the fence the night I ran from the home. But no, the first scar was earlier, before blood. It was when my mother signed a paper with my name on it and walked away without looking back. A gray room, a bored clerk, and the sound of a pen scratching louder than my heartbeat. That was the cut that never healed. The home was supposed to be safe. It was anything but. Older boys ruled with fists, and the staff turned blind eyes. Omegas were always last in line, last for food, first for punishment. I learned quick, don't cry, don't show weakness, don't expect rescue. The bruises faded. The lesson didn't. I ran when I was 12, climbed that fence, tore my arm open, landed in the dirt, and never looked back. The streets were worse in some ways, better in others. At least pain there was honest. At least you knew the rules. If you're weak, you're prey. If you're clever, you live another day. That's where I met Mika. She was barely more than a child, ribs showing through her shirt, cornered by a pair of betas who thought hunger made her fair game. I didn't think. I just fought. My knuckles split on their jaws, and my ribs screamed when they kicked back, but I didn't stop until they ran. I remember Mika looking at me with eyes too wide, too trusting. She followed me after that, like a stray who decided I was home. That was the night I became a leader. Though I didn't know it then. You protect one, you start protecting them all. Every bruise I took for them carved me deeper into the role until there was no part of me left untouched. I pressed my hand against my chest now, fingers finding the faint rise of a scar I got years later, not from a blade, from fire. The memory burned hotter than the wound, and yet, even my scars felt small compared to the shadows I glimpsed in the chain dog's eyes. Somewhere else in the city, in an office too clean to breathe in, Jeffrey sat with his own ghosts. I could picture it as clearly as if I'd seen it. Him alone, the blinds drawn, the file he never opened anymore. The one with her name on it. His Omega. She'd been caught in a raid, gone wrong. He'd been seconds late, maybe minutes. He'd found her in the rubble, blood slick across her skin, breath already gone. He'd held her, gloves torn off, hands shaking with something he couldn't command back into order. Her scent had been fading even as he begged her to stay. He never told anyone what he whispered into the silence. But I knew the sound of guilt when I saw it written in a man's posture. It carved him into the chained dog. Not loyalty, not discipline. A vow, never again, never feel enough to lose again. Never allow weakness disguised as love. 2 stories, 2 roads, one from abandonment, one from loss, both paved with wounds that refused to close. I closed my eyes and exhaled, a bitter laugh slipping out. Funny in a way. How different our scars looked, yet how they bound us the same. Prisoners in our own past, dragging chains that cut deeper the longer we wore them. Maybe that was why his gaze rattled me. Because in it, for a split second, I didn't see a cop or an alpha. I saw another prisoner. And the worst part? Some part of me wanted to believe prisoners could set each other free. The precinct's conference room smelled of bleach and burnt coffee. Fluorescence buzzed overhead, merciless, throwing no shadows to hide in. Files were stacked like bricks along the table, each stamped with red directives. On top lay one thin folder with a word scrawled in black. Sweep. Jeffrey stood at attention, hands behind his back, shoulders carved into soldiers' lines. He could have been another statue in the room, if not for the pulse beating slow in his jaw. The captain slid the folder toward him. Lower district strays. Eliminate the pack. Make it final. There was no hesitation in the order. No question. Just protocol delivered like a hammer. Jeffrey opened the file. Photos stared back. Grainy shots of a warehouse. Blurred figures slipping through shadows. Lennox's face captured once in the frame. Hood low, eyes lit with feral defiance. Younger than he looked. Too young for the weight he carried. Jeffrey shut the file before the room noticed the flicker in his chest. Lieutenant? The captain pressed. His voice was flat. Understood. The room dismissed him. But in the hallway, Grace was waiting, her smirk sharp enough to cut. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, nails painted the color of dried blood. So it's official, she purred. Our favorite strays get put down. And you, dog, you get to lead the hunt. Perfect chance to prove you're still the chain everyone thinks you are. Her eyes gleamed with malice. She wanted him to flinch. She wanted proof of softness. You've been hesitating, she whispered. Close enough for only him to hear. That hesitation will kill you. Or worse, it'll kill us. Better to break a few puppies now than let them grow teeth. Jeffrey didn't answer. Silence was the only weapon he had left in moments like these. But Grace stepped closer, lowering her voice until it hissed like steam. Don't tell me you're starting to care. Because if you are, the leash isn't around your throat anymore. It's broken. And we both know what happens to a rabid dog. He looked at her once, steady and cold, enough to make her falter half a step. But she grinned anyway, satisfied with the seed she'd planted. "Tomorrow night," she added. "Be ready." When she left, the corridor was too quiet. The walls pressed in, the weight of the order heavier than his uniform. He braced his hand against the cool concrete, breath slow, deliberate. The memory of her face returned, his lost Omega, eyes closing in his arms, scent fading into nothing. Then another face intruded. Lennox, knife at his throat, eyes burning, alive in a way that made the past ache. If he followed orders, he would bury another Omega. This time, by his own hand. His chest clenched, breath catching against the vow he'd lived by for years, never again. But the order lay signed, stamped, unshakable. And he knew one truth as certain as chains: obeying meant losing the last shred of himself that still remembered what it was to feel. The tunnels stank of mildew and old fire. Brick walls sweated with damp. And every sound carried too far. Our footsteps, Mika. Cough, the scrape of River's knife against stone as he checked the way ahead. We'd moved deeper into the maze of abandoned subway lines, thinking the police wouldn't risk coming this far underground. I should have known better. The first hiss of gas canisters came without warning. White smoke burst into the tunnel like a living thing, curling around our legs, burning eyes and throats. Mika shrieked, clapping a sleeve to her mouth. Kai fumbled with his laptop bag, coughing, already swearing in every language he knew. "Back!" I shouted, dragging Mika toward the wall. My lungs screamed, but anger cut sharper than the smoke. They found us. Boots thundered on concrete, rifles clattered. Flashlights cut through the haze in violent beams. Over the chaos came a voice I knew too well, sharp and vicious. "Flush them out." Grace barked. "End it. Tonight." Her unit surged forward. Shadows of helmets and rifles loomed larger, distorted by smoke. Bullets cracked against the tunnel walls, sending shards of brick flying. River lunged into the fog with a roar, blade flashing silver. He drove one officer back, leaving a red streak down the man's arm. Mika clung to me, coughing hard enough to fold in half. I shoved her behind an overturned cart, throwing myself between her and the oncoming line. A rookie swung his baton at my head. I caught it on my forearm, pain sparking white, and drove my knife into his thigh. He howled, crumpling, rifle clattering away. "Lennox!" Kai's voice echoed, panicked. He dropped flat, typing furiously with shaking hands, trying to jam their radios. Sparks flared from the cheap receiver he carried, but the gunfire kept coming. Another canister rolled across the floor, spewing smoke. My vision blurred. Mika whimpered behind me, too small in the storm. My fury roared louder than fear. Not her. Not my pack. I charged, knife raised, throat raw from the smoke. One officer stumbled back at the sight of me, another leveled his weapon. The muzzle flashed, and then the shot never landed. A figure stepped between us, broad shoulders cutting the light, armor catching the blast. The bullet hit plate, ricocheted off with a metallic scream. Jeffrey, the chain dog, stood in the middle of the tunnel, visor up, gray eyes hard as steel. His body blocked the line of fire completely, planted like he belonged there. "Hold fire." His voice boomed, deeper than the tunnel itself. "Stand down." For a breathless second, his unit hesitated. Even the smoke seemed to pause. Grace's fury cut through the confusion. "Lieutenant, what the hell are you doing?" She shoved past, rifle snapping up. "They're vermin." "Move." But he didn't. I gaped, knife still raised, lungs burning. The alpha I'd cursed, tested, mocked, standing there with his back to me, his chest facing the guns. Protecting us. Protecting me. Grace's voice twisted, dripping venom. "You've lost it. You've gone rabid. Lower your weapons," Jeffrey commanded, every syllable an order carved in iron. The rookies faltered, eyes darting between their superior officers. Some began to obey, rifles trembling downward. Others raised them higher, caught in the storm of divided loyalty. The crack in their unity widened, dangerous and irreversible. River stumbled out of the haze, knife dripping, chest heaving. He froze when he saw Jeffrey in front of us. "What?" "Behind me," Jeffrey said without turning, and I obeyed. Not out of trust, not yet. Out of instinct. Out of the raw, terrible fact that in that moment, he was the only wall between us and slaughter. Grace snarled, spittle catching the lamplight. "You'll pay for this, dog. You and your strays both." She signaled sharply, pulling half the squad back. The rest stayed frozen, unwilling to cross him. The smoke thinned enough for me to see his profile, lit by a flickering emergency bulb. His jaw was set, his eyes storm gray, his hand steady at his side. He hadn't drawn his weapon. He didn't need to. His defiance was weapon enough. My chest hammered, fury tangled with something far more dangerous, the crack of belief. We retreated in the chaos, dragging Mika and Kai, River covering our backs. The tunnel walls closed around us, but Jeffrey's figure stayed imprinted, behind my eyes, tall and immovable against the hail of betrayal. For the first time, I didn't know who the real enemy was. And for the first time, I feared it wasn't the cops or the city. It was the chain breaking from his own throat, and what that meant for all of us. The tunnels roared like a beast in its death throes. Smoke clung to the ceiling, gunfire snapped down the walls, and boots hammered against the floor. My lungs burned raw, every muscle begging to collapse. But beside me stood the chain dog, immovable. "Left," Jeffrey barked, shoving me sideways. I hit the wall just as a bullet ricocheted where my ribs had been. "You could say please," I snapped, lunging forward to slash the rifle out of a rookie's grip. His mouth twitched, half grimace, half smirk, as he swung his baton into another officer's chest. "You don't strike me as the type who likes polite. Maybe I just like proving you wrong." I planted a boot against the fallen officer, shoving him back, blade gleaming. Smoke smeared my vision, but I felt Jeffrey's presence at my shoulder like a second heartbeat. For a moment, chaos bent around us, me and him back to back, moving as if we'd trained for this. When I ducked, he covered. When he pushed forward, I cut through the gaps. Sparks flew from metal, voices shouted, and still we held the line. "Do your pups always fight this dirty?" he asked between strikes, voice calm in the storm. "They learned from me." I shot back. I twisted, elbow cracking against a helmet. "You want me to apologize for not fighting fair?" "Never." He shoved a man against the wall, wrenching the rifle from his hands. "Fair fights get you killed." A laugh tore out of me, jagged and unexpected. God, what are we doing? An Omega and a cop, fighting shoulder to shoulder against the world. Behind us, Kai yelled, "What the hell is happening?" River's voice cut in, steadier, "Look." I risked a glance. My pack stood frozen mid-fight, wide-eyed as they watched me and Jeffrey tear through the opposition together. The disbelief on their faces was a mirror of my own. They'd seen alphas drag us, beat us, cage us. They'd never seen one shield us. And yet here he was, a wall at my side, chain or no chain. Another rush surged. Smoke cleared just enough to show Grace snarling orders, her voice shrill with rage. "Take them both down. Do it now." A cluster of officers charged. Jeffrey stepped forward, shielding me with his body. "Stay behind." "Not a chance," I snapped, darting past him. My blade caught the light, a flash of silver. "We're partners tonight, dog. Deal with it." His gray eyes flicked toward me, unreadable in the haze. But he didn't argue. Together we broke the charge, my knife cutting a path, his baton crushing through armor. Boots slipped on the wet concrete. Shouts rang out. Weapons clattered. The tide broke around us. By the time the last officer staggered back, clutching his arm, the tunnel had gone eerily quiet again. Only the echoes of our breathing filled the dark. Smoke thinned, revealing faces. Mika clutching Kai, River standing watch, all of them staring at us like the laws of the universe had bent in front of their eyes. I wiped sweat from my forehead, knife still trembling in my grip. Jeffrey stood tall, chest heaving, his uniform streaked with dirt and ash. He turned his head, and for the first time, his gaze wasn't command or restraint. It was something closer to recognition. Our eyes locked. Something inside me shifted, slow and dangerous. Maybe, I thought, chest tight. An alpha doesn't always have to be above you. Maybe he can stand beside you. The thought scared me more than any bullet ever could. The place we found was barely a room, an old cellar that stank of damp, stone and mold, with water dripping slow from cracks in the ceiling. But it was shelter, and after the chaos of the tunnels, shelter was gold. River lit 2 stubby candles, their light flickering weak and uneven across the walls. Shadows stretched long, making the space look bigger than it was. My pack curled close together on old tarps, too exhausted to care about the smell. I should have been just as wrecked. Instead, my hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, but from fury. And from him. Jeffrey sat against the far wall, armor dented, shirt dark with blood at the shoulder. He hadn't made a sound, not even when River tore open the plates to check the wound. Typical. The chain dog didn't whine. He just bled quietly, like even his pain was disciplined. "Don't touch it," Jeffrey muttered, when I came closer with the rag I'd wrung out in a bucket of cloudy water. I crouched anyway, pressing the cloth against his shoulder harder than necessary. "You don't get to give orders here. You're in my den now." His jaw tightened, but he didn't shove me away. Blood soaked into the rag, hot against my palm. My throat burned with words I didn't want to say, so I buried them in irritation instead. "Don't you dare die in my damn cellar. If you're going to keel over, do it somewhere that doesn't stink of mildew." A low chuckle rumbled out of him, rough and dry. "That's the kindest bedside manner I've ever had." "Don't mistake it for kindness," I snapped. "I just don't want Mika crying over you. She's had enough grief for one lifetime." His eyes softened at the name, a shift so small it might have been imagined. I hated that it made my chest feel tight. I pressed harder on the wound. He hissed but stayed still. "You're supposed to be the big bad chain dog," I said. "And here you are, letting an Omega patch you up." "Not letting," he said quietly. "Trusting." The word hit harder than the smell of blood. I froze, rag clutched tight. For a moment I couldn't meet his eyes. My whole life had been proof that trust was poison, a trap laid out to choke you, and yet, here he was, bleeding all over my floor, telling me he trusted me. "You're insane," I muttered finally. "Completely broken. Maybe." His lips quirked, faintly. "But broken things can still guard what matters." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the drip of water and the unsteady beat of my pulse. I leaned back, rag red and useless in my hand. "Listen, dog," I said, my voice rougher than I wanted. "Don't twist this. I'm not your mate. Don't even think it." His gaze held mine, steady as iron. "I don't." "Good," I said quickly. My throat worked, because I'm not here to be owned. I'm not a leash, or a prize, or whatever else alphas think they deserve. I swallowed hard, fingers tightening around the rag. "I'm your partner, nothing more, nothing less." The words echoed in the stone chamber, louder than I'd meant them to. For a heartbeat, I wanted to take them back, but then I saw his expression. Not hunger, not command, just the faintest curve of respect at the corner of his mouth. "Partner," he repeated, the words settling like a vow. The candlelight flickered. My pack stirred in restless sleep, and for the first time the damp cellar felt less like a cage and more like a beginning. Morning light crept in through the cracks of the cellar door, turning dust into gold. It wasn't much of a home, just stone walls, tarps for beds, and the faint drip of water. In the corner, but it was dry, it was hidden, and most importantly, it was ours. Mika had already claimed a corner with her cords and scraps, braiding them into something that looked almost like decoration. Kai sat cross-legged by the lantern, fiddling with wires and muttering about upgrades no one else understood. River leaned against the wall, sharpening his knife with the same patience as always, eyes sweeping the room like a silent guardian. And Jeffrey, no longer in uniform, no longer carrying the badge that chained him, sat among us. The chain dog without a chain. He looked out of place at first, broad shoulders hunched beneath a patched shirt I'd shoved at him, his arm still bound from the wound. But when Mika offered him one of her half-braided cords, and he actually took it, fingers, brushing hers with surprising gentleness, something inside the room shifted. For the first time, he wasn't the cop, and we weren't the strays. We were just a pack. I leaned back against the wall, watching the scene unfold. My chest loosened in a way I didn't recognize. I realized, with a shock that made me almost laugh, that it was the first time in years I'd seen my people smile without flinching. Mika's giggle rang clear, Kai snorted at his own bad joke, and even River's mouth twitched like it was considering a grin. I caught myself smiling too, not the sharp, mocking grin I wore like armor, but something real, fragile, dangerous. Jeffrey noticed. Of course he did. His gray eyes settled on me, calm and steady, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You look different when you smile," he said. "Don't get used to it," I shot back automatically. But the heat on my face betrayed me. He tilted his head. "Maybe I already am." I rolled my eyes, turning away before Mika could see the crack in my composure. Still, the words stayed with me, humming like an echo I didn't want to silence. The hours stretched easy. We patched holes, arranged supplies, argued about who got which corner. It wasn't comfort, not yet, but it was closer than we'd ever been. And for once, I let myself breathe without bracing for the next strike. When the work was done, we sprawled in a loose circle, the candles casting long shadows across the walls. Jeffrey sat with us, his presence no longer looming, just solid, unshakable. Ours. I eyed him, letting the smile curl back onto my lips. "So tell me, chain dog, now that you're not wearing that leash, does this mean you're one of us? Another bad puppy in the pack?" Kai snorted into his sleeve, Mika's eyes lit with mischief, and even River looked like he was waiting for the answer. Jeffrey arched a brow, mouth tugging into the smallest smirk. "I'd say I'm more the one holding the leash, keeping you all from running off cliffs." I leaned forward, grinning sharp. "Try it, dog. Just try." The laughter that followed was raw, real, unguarded. It filled the damp cellar and drowned out every echo of fear that had lived here before. For the first time, I didn't feel like an omega fighting to prove I wasn't prey. I didn't feel like a leader dragging my pack through fire. I felt like part of something bigger, something equal. A family. Our scars were still there, old and new, but so were we. And together, even as bad puppies, we were strong enough to bite back at the world.